This is Nightly Business Report with Tyler Matheson and Sue Herrera.
Up in the clouds, Microsoft posts better than expected profits. Tonight, a host of companies out with earnings reports, most of them favorable.
Major media shakeup. Roger Ailes of Fox News created a media business powerhouse, and now multiple reports say the head of perhaps the most profitable brand in news may be on his way out.
Get out the vote, why companies are courting mom and pop investors once again. Those stories and more tonight on Nightly Business Report for Tuesday, July 19th.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. A new record for the Dow. It's 8th straight day of gains, and we begin tonight, though, with earnings from Microsoft, which added to the string of strong results reported by other Dow components. Microsoft's quarter was powered by its relatively new cloud business and not by the product it may be best known for, Windows. CEO Satya Nadella has shifted the company's focus amid slowing PC sales. Now, the Dow component earned 69 cents a share. That is a full 11 cents better than estimates. Revenue also topped expectations for the quarter, rising 2% from a year ago, although annual revenue fell 8.8% from fiscal 2015. That's the first time annual sales have fallen since 2009. Still, investors like what they saw, sending shares higher in initial after-hours trading. Josh Lipton has more on Microsoft's results.
$6.7 billion. That was the big number in Microsoft's latest earnings report. That was the revenue Microsoft reported for its so-called intelligent cloud segment. Kirk Materne of Evercore ISI, who covers Microsoft, says that's important because this move to the cloud is a critical part of Microsoft's strategy going forward. It was also weaker than expected in the third quarter, so investors wanted to see this bounce back. He also notes that revenue from Azure, which is Microsoft's cloud computing platform, surged some 102%. Meanwhile, operating margins for the company came in better than expected at 27%. Materne says that means Microsoft is capably balancing investing in the cloud with cost control. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Josh Lipton in San Francisco.
We also got results from 3 other blue chip companies, and all 3 of them beat expectations. Goldman Sachs, United Healthcare, and Johnson & Johnson reported strong quarters, but for different reasons.
Johnson & Johnson saw pharmaceutical sales jump 9%. Thanks to sales of a blood thinner and drugs that treat diabetes and prostate cancer, J&J posted an earnings beat and raised both revenue and earnings guidance for the year. Sales of J&J's globally known consumer brands, things like Band-Aids, Listerine, and Tylenol, were dented by currency headwinds, down almost 2%. But the company says currency headwinds are easing somewhat, while medical device sales were up almost 1%. J&J's strength across those 3 core businesses, pharmaceutical, consumer, and devices, continue to provide multiple sources for growth.
We're all 3 of those things, and overall we're focused broadly based in human healthcare, and we think that's the right way to approach an ever-evolving dynamic healthcare environment where we can access growth no matter where it is.
The country's biggest health insurer, United Health Group, also beat earnings and revenue expectations thanks to its thriving pharmacy services business. It too raised profit guidance for the rest of the year, even though losses blamed on its Affordable Care Act plans are mounting. Another $200 million brings its projected ACA-related losses for the year to $850 million, mostly because of larger-than-expected enrollment and because those enrolled are proving to be less healthy than expected. Goldman Sachs also beat earnings and revenue estimates. Quarterly earnings rose 74% as it moved past the legal costs that weighed down its first quarter numbers. Despite beating estimates, though, Goldman's revenue was still down 13%, falling from more than $9 billion a year ago to less than $8 billion in 2016. Stock trading revenue was down 12%, mostly due to weakness in Asia.
So here's how those stocks performed today. Johnson & Johnson hit an all-time high. United Health moved higher as well, but Goldman Sachs finished the session to the downside.
Well, the bar had been set low for earnings this season, but Wall Street's worst fears don't seem to be playing out, at least not yet. Bob Pisani explains.
It's early, but there are signs that earnings might be better than everyone thought they would be. Earnings anxiety has been running high recently because analysts have been expecting an improvement in the U.S. economy and an improvement in earnings in the second half of the year. But the whole Brexit vote has made a lot of traders nervous that big multinationals like General Electric might use the Brexit vote as an excuse to talk down earnings for the second half of the year. But so far, that hasn't happened. All the major U.S. banks have reported, and all of them have beaten estimates. In fact, Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, and Citigroup had significant beats. So those strong bank earnings have lifted second quarter earnings estimates for the S&P 500 overall. Earnings are still expected to be down about 5%, but that's better than it was last week. And early reports from other sectors have been better than expected as well. So what the market really cares about is guidance for the second half of the year, and there are hopeful signs here as well. This morning, Johnson & Johnson and Lockheed Martin both raised sales and earnings guidance for the full year. Lockheed cited exceptional operational and financial results as the reason for raising their guidance. So the bottom line is only 11% of the S&P is reported so far, but the early signs have been encouraging, and that is one reason the markets are holding up so well. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Bob Pisani at the New York Stock Exchange.
Those positive earnings helped the Dow hit a record high for the 6th day in a row. But the gains weren't big, and they weren't across all major indices, I should say. The Dow Jones Industrial Average added almost 26 points to 18,559. The Nasdaq, weighed down by Netflix, lost 19 points. As we reported last night, Netflix saw subscriber growth slow. The S&P 500, meanwhile, lost 3.
To politics now, and Cleveland, where the theme of the second day of the Republican National Convention was about getting America working again. John Harwood is there reporting for us tonight. John, day one was about security and about Melania Trump's speech. Tell us about day one, and what about today's theme?
Well, of course, we had a lot of controversy all day long about that Melania Trump speech with the lifting of passages from Michelle Obama's speech, people calling for someone to be fired. Didn't happen, but Republicans are going to shift to the economy tonight. We'll hear from Paul Ryan, the House Speaker. We'll hear from Mitch McConnell, Shelley Moore Capito of West Virginia, arguing that Democratic policies have hurt her coal-producing state. So all economy tonight.
You know, you mentioned Paul Ryan, the House Speaker. He has not had what you would call a warm relationship with Mr. Trump. So what do we expect from him tonight?
We expect Paul Ryan to make it a little bit clearer if he's going to draw closer to Donald Trump or hold his ground on policy. Remember, they've got big differences, Sue, on trade, on immigration, on entitlement reform, on Glass-Steagall, which Donald Trump has put a revival of Glass-Steagall into the Republican platform. That's an Elizabeth Warren position. I would be shocked if Paul Ryan comes out in favor of that, but we're going to get some clues in his remarks whether he is going to move toward his presidential nominee or not.
Very interesting theater on display on the podium tonight. Let's talk a little bit about the raucousness that we saw yesterday as some of the rules were being debated, even booing on the floor. How about tonight? Any of that expected?
Well, we're going to, before too long, have a roll call of the states to nominate Donald Trump. No mystery about the outcome. Donald Trump's going to be nominated. But are the state delegations not for him, like Colorado or Virginia? Are they going to, you know, there's some dissonance within those delegations. Are they going to make a lot of noise like they did yesterday? That's a key question. And wrapping up the night after the Donald Trump nomination, we are going to get a second dose of the Trump family. Donald Trump Jr. and Donald Trump's daughter, Tiffany, are both going to speak tonight. We'll see whether they address that Melania controversy.
I was just going to say, do you think that they will mention it? And what do we know about what they might say? Is their role tonight to kind of broaden out who Donald Trump is, the family man?
Yes, that's the goal. And in the actual delivery of her speech, Melania Trump did fine last night. It was just when people realized that she had some of Michelle Obama's rhetoric that she got in trouble. But Donald Trump Jr. in an interview this evening said we're moving on. So I would not expect them to address it, if only indirectly perhaps, but not directly.
All right, John, thank you very much. John Harwood for us in Cleveland.
Well, there is a lot of political theater at the GOP convention, of course. Meantime, another drama is playing out at one of the networks covering the event, one that is closely associated with Republican politics. CNBC's David Faber and others report a decision is near on the future of Fox News chairman and CEO Roger Ailes, and that decision will likely result in his departure. Mr. Ailes was sued earlier this month by former Fox anchor Gretchen Carlson. Carlson claimed that her career was sabotaged by Mr. Ailes after she refused his sexual advances. Ailes has denied the allegations. Other reports today say one of Fox's best-known anchors, Megyn Kelly, told investigators hired by 21st Century Fox, which owns Fox News Channel, that Ailes sexually harassed her in the past as well. Fox says that the investigation is ongoing and that Ailes is at work. At first reported by New York Magazine, that harassment was described in detail. Ailes' departure would be a big deal for the media powerhouse, which he basically built and turned into a revenue-generating machine. Julia Borston has more.
Fox News chief Roger Ailes oversees one of the most high-profile and profitable parts of 21st Century Fox. Ailes is chairman and CEO of Fox News, including Fox Business Network, which he launched in 2007. He's also chairman of Fox TV Station, which includes 28 broadcast stations. Nomura analyst Anthony DiClemente says that Ailes' businesses are a huge piece of the media giant's revenue and profits. DiClemente estimating that this fiscal year, Fox News alone would generate about 20% of total earnings before interest, taxes, and amortization. And Ailes' businesses continue to grow. SNL Kagan projects that ad revenue at Fox News Channel and Fox Business Network will grow 5.6% this year. With billions of dollars on the line, the pressure is on for how the Murdochs handle next step for Fox News leadership. Back over to you.
Still ahead, the promise and the limitations facing the very new self-driving car industry. Home building rebounded in June. Housing starts rose by 4.8% last month, driven by big gains in the West and Northeast. The report from the Commerce Department shows more than 1 million homes were under construction in June, and that is the highest level since February of 2008. Demand for single-family homes is due mainly to low interest rates and a steady job market.
The steady economy here in the U.S. didn't stop the International Monetary Fund from cutting its global economic growth forecast for this year and next. The IMF now sees an increase of a little more than 3%. That's lower than its previous outlook. The main reason for the cut? Britain's vote to leave the European Union.
The Brexit effects are going to play out over a long period of many months as the EU 27 and the UK renegotiate a new agreement. I think one is always surprised by what stock markets do, but they're also responding to other things. For example, the prospect that central banks maintain interest rates lower for longer as a result of the Brexit vote.
The IMF said that before the Brexit vote, it actually had planned to slightly upgrade its outlook.
Antitrust officials are reportedly close to filing lawsuits to block the planned mergers of Anthem and Cigna, as well as Aetna and Humana. As first reported by Bloomberg, the Justice Department is concerned that the deals would harm consumers and stifle competition. If both deals were to go through, the top 5 health insurers would be reduced to just 3. The proposed Aetna-Humana deal is valued at $34 billion, Anthem-Cigna at $48 billion. All 4 of the companies finished lower on the day.
As the Justice Department looks at healthcare mergers, the Department of Transportation is examining the future of driving. The Autonomous Vehicle Summit is bringing together leaders from the automotive industry to figure out what limits should be placed on self-driving cars. Phil LeBeau is in San Francisco.
With 14 companies, including several automakers, developing and testing autonomous drive technology on the roads in California, there's no doubt that the day of the self-driving car is approaching. In fact, the Secretary of Transportation says the key is to be ready for the development of these vehicles and to develop the guidelines that will allow them to be integrated into traffic safely. But that brings up the question, is the public ready for self-driving cars? Secretary Anthony Foxx says The technology is there. People need to learn how to use it correctly.
I think it's a new form of distraction. It's people being distracted by the coolness of the technology, but they, in many cases, are going well beyond what the technology is capable of doing. So we have to, as industry, as also as government, and as consumers, have to listen and read the directions, not go far away from where the directions are and doing crazy things that are going to put your life at stake and other people's lives at stake.
Secretary Fox would not comment on a U.S. investigation into Tesla's autopilot system. Meanwhile, Tesla CEO Elon Musk says his company is working with its suppliers to improve the autopilot system. And Musk says Tesla has no plans at this point to disable the autopilot feature on thousands of vehicles here in the U.S. and around the world. Phil LeBeau, Nightly Business Report, San Francisco.
The fallout from Volkswagen's emissions scandal is far from over. 3 attorneys general say the cheating lasted more than a decade and involved dozens of engineers, managers, and executives. The lawsuits allege the decision to cheat went all the way to the company's boardroom and involved VW's CEO Matthias Mueller. The accusations are being leveled in lawsuits from New York, Maryland, and Massachusetts. Late last year, the automaker admitted to equipping roughly 11 million vehicles with emissions cheating software.
United Continental tops estimates, and that's where we begin tonight's Market Focus. The airline saw quarterly revenue and profit fall, but the results were still good enough to top Wall Street targets. United said it also added a new member to its board of directors. Shares were relatively flat in after-hours trading, but finished the regular session up 14 cents to $47.85. Military contractor Lockheed Martin topped expectations for both profit and revenue, thanks in part to an increase in fighter jet deliveries and sales tied to a recent acquisition. The upbeat results prompted the company to raise its guidance for the year. Shares were up 1% to $258.96. An uptick in commissions and transaction fees drove profit and revenue higher at TD Ameritrade. The brokerage's better-than-expected results were also helped by volatile trading during the Brexit. TD Ameritrade shares rose 2% to $29.93.
Monsanto rejects buyer's offer once again. The seed company turned down the pharmaceutical giant's $64 billion takeover bid, calling it, quote, financially inadequate. Despite that, Monsanto said it's still open to further talks with Bayer as well as other parties regarding a potential transaction. Shares of Monsanto up nearly 0.5% to 106.87. The cigarette maker Philip Morris said lower shipment volumes caused both profit and revenue to fall, missing analyst estimates. But the company did raise yearly earnings forecasts, citing improving currency valuations. Shares down 3% to $99.89. Cost-cutting efforts helped Kansas City Southern post better than expected profit for the quarter. The railroad operator did, however, see a decline in revenue as currency headwinds impacted results. Shares up nearly 2% to $97.42.
Investors pulled more than $20 billion from actively managed funds that buy U.S. stocks in June. According to Morningstar, that's the biggest monthly withdrawal since October of 2008, I should say. Asset management executives have recently said that the move into passive funds will continue and that the shift could threaten the profit margins of investment companies.
Companies threatened by activists and other big shareholders are turning, believe it or not, to mom-and-pop investors to help fight their battles. This according to a new online Wall Street Journal report. Companies are doing everything to target individual investors, from planting trees to new marketing campaigns for their votes. David Benoit is a reporter with the Wall Street Journal and joins us now to talk more about his findings. David, this runs counter to what everybody thinks, and that is that companies care only about the big institutions, the professional investors, even as they worry about the activists who can sometimes cause trouble for them. But you found something very surprising here.
Yeah, that's exactly right. What we've seen is in the last few years is some of the bigger investors are getting ever bigger and sort of controlling the top of these companies. And the retail shareholders, the people that are out kind of buying and trading stocks, don't really matter that much in terms of the overall stock holdings. But what we've seen is that because those big holders have such a strong voice, when a company needs a little bit of extra support or needs a different voice, retail shareholders tend to support companies. So the companies are spending a lot of money to go out and trying to get these people to vote.
If we didn't have the activist investor movement, do you think that these companies would be courting the individual investor?
That's definitely a big part of this. So right, the big example of when retail really mattered was in the DuPont campaign last year, where Nelson Peltz and his Trian fund were trying to get on the board there. DuPont had a kind of abnormally large position for retail people. A lot of people, a lot of retirees from DuPont, a lot of people in Wilmington really own the company stock. And they went out and got a big chunk of them to vote, and essentially it swung the vote for them and helped them win. There are other examples of why you need a retail vote. The say on pay votes that are going on right now that allow shareholders to vote on company pay are really important, and they need kind of extra support. So that's another one.
What is the percentage roughly of retail investors in American corporations, number one? And number two, I guess that most retailer investors, when they get the proxy materials in the mail, throw it out. They don't vote. What's the turnout like?
That's definitely true. So one of the reasons why this story is kind of strange is those numbers are going in the direction you just guessed. Retail holders now own about 34%, and they only vote about 28% of the time. Those numbers are trending in the wrong direction for kind of even wanting to care about them. But if essentially the story is, if you do enough things, if you make your ballot look a little bit more intriguing to open, if you promise, as you mentioned in the beginning, CSX, the railroad, is out there pledging to plant a tree if you vote, you can sort of coax these people into caring.
Right. You know, but how costly are those kinds of things? I mean, you cited also Humana picking up an outside company, and they had to make some 40,000 calls.
Correct.
So there are costs associated with reaching out to the retail investor as well.
Yeah, exactly. Running a proxy fight when you're up against an activist, or campaigning to get a vote passed, or paying someone like a proxy solicitor, which are firms that specialize in getting people to vote, that's not cheap. It's definitely expensive, which is one of the reasons why we should sort of be careful that this isn't going to happen every time. There are only some instances. Humana needed 75% support of its total shares to get a vote, so you kind of have to go out and change the map.
All right, David, thank you very much. David Benoit with the Wall Street Journal.
Thanks so much.
Coming up, why fewer people are starting their own businesses and what that may mean for the U.S. economy. Twitter signs a deal with the NBA. The partnership does not include digital rights to stream games, but it does allow the streaming of new shows made exclusively for Twitter. The first show will be a weekly pregame show. The second show is still in the works. Both programs will stream on Twitter's app and the website beginning in the 2016 to 2017 season.
McDonald's will reportedly become the first big business to make a deal with Pokemon Go. According to the Wall Street Journal, a unit of the burger chain in Japan will sponsor key locations for players of the wildly popular augmented reality mobile game. The official announcement could come as soon as tomorrow, along with the game launch in that country.
Small businesses are considered the engine behind job creation, but new businesses aren't being created like they once were. According to a new report, the 4-year trend of rising entrepreneurship has reversed. Kate Rogers is following the story for us. Kate, good to see you. So what did the report find?
Nice to see you both. Well, this is called the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor for 2015. Surveys 70 different countries, 200,000 respondents around the world. So their U.S. report for last year found a 2% drop in entrepreneurship and startup creation to 12% from 14% in 2014. So it's important for two reasons. As you mentioned, this had been rising for 4 years prior. So it's obviously reversing a trend that we do like to see. And secondly, this report counts you as a startup creator, even if you're still working your full-time job and starting something on the side. Many surveys don't count you until you've actually left that stable job and started a new business. So typically their numbers are higher. This year they fell.
Why are startups down?
It's all about perception of opportunity. So the report and the researchers said that In 2014, 51% of Americans creating new startups perceived an opportunity to do so. That number fell to 47% in 2015. And something that we mention on this show often is Main Street optimism. So that's among established small businesses per the NFIB, a survey that we follow all the time. Optimism's been wavering. It certainly hasn't been climbing. So when you get that coupled with startup creation being down, it could be kind of a red flag for Main Street.
Was there any good news?
Yes.
Please say yes.
Please, Kate.
Please say
I'm not
yes.
a bearer of bad news, so of course I came with some good news. So 2 stats I did like in here. Number 1, African American small business creation up to 14% compared to Caucasians at just 12%. And also women entrepreneurs between the ages of 35 and 44. Their stats rose to 15%. And typically when you're on your second or maybe third career, you have a little bit more success as an entrepreneur. So those in their 20s tend to fail and fail again, and then they go start something new. When you're in the sweet spot in your 30s and 40s, you have more of a chance of success. And of course, we love to see women out there starting businesses.
Absolutely.
Shark Tank's Kevin O'Leary says he only invests in women-run businesses.
He swears by it. I think much of his portfolio now and for the future will be women-owned companies because they do so well for him. So.
Excellent.
Kate, great to see you.
Thank you both.
See you, Kate. Thanks. And to read more about the decline in entrepreneurship and the rosy figures that Kate just mentioned, go to our website, nbr.com. That'll do it for Nightly Business Report for tonight. I'm Sue Herrera. Thanks for joining us.
And I'm Tyler Matheson. Thanks for me as well. Have a great evening, everybody, and we'll see you back here tomorrow night.